Welcome back to another Thursday on the Pagan Perspective. I'm your host, Yeka, and this week we're talking about healing. So our topic is specifically about healing from or for dysmenorrhea, and it comes from Olive Fern, who writes, "Will you help me learn how to heal myself? I have dysmenorrhea and wanted to know how to deal with it." So I want to address specifically this individual's question, but also expand it to not just dysmenorrhea, which depending on one's biology is something that they can or cannot experience that requires the female reproductive system. So I'm going to talk about that topic specifically, but try and do it in such a way which is broad enough that it could apply to any sort of disease or discomfort. So getting into this, one of the trends that I have observed, and not to say that everybody does this, but it's a trend, that folks often want to skip straight to spell work, right? And it's really romantic. It feels good, it feels empowering, it feels like you're doing something, but it may not always be the case, be the most appropriate approach. Not that spell work isn't sometimes or isn't often, but it's one tool that we have in a whole set of tools, or it's a group of tools because there's lots of different kinds of spell work. So I think that when it comes to diseases or conditions, anything like that, that it can be really helpful to take a look at it and say, what is the cause? Why is this happening? What is it and why? And unfortunately, with bodies, like any ecosystem, there's rarely ever an easy one-to-one answer. It's not, oh, you push this one button and everything's fixed, right? That we actually are very, very complex. And whatever's going on probably has a lot of different variables affecting it. So specifically with dysmenorrhea, and I actually have to say before I get any further into this, I've got to put the disclaimer in that I am not a doctor, healthcare provider, therefore nothing I am saying should be taken as medical advice. It's for informational purposes anyway, only for informational purposes, and you need to speak with your healthcare provider for personal medical advice. Okay, all of that being said, so dysmenorrhea is a type of hormone imbalance. So whatever's going on, and there's a lot of different things which could be causing it, but typically it's going to have to do with one of the sex hormones, and either too much or too little or inappropriate timing of those hormones. Now, a very common response or answer that doctors will have for a young female, or not young, for a female who's dealing with this will be either here's a painkiller or here's some birth control, because we've got different kinds of birth control, but they supply synthetic forms of our sex hormones. And what that does is it can remove the symptom, and it can create a lot of, it can really help a lot of people feel better. Unfortunately though, it's addressing the symptom, right? It's addressing what happens because of the imbalance in the hormones, but it never gets to the point of why is there that imbalance. It is possible, but very, very unlikely, that the imbalance is coming from some sort of genetic mutation that the individual has. More likely, it's coming from some sort of lifestyle factor. It's coming from, and probably a pretty big combination of lifestyle factors, from anything ranging from diet, exercise, environmental exposures, stress management, all kinds of things which could be the root of the issue. So, whatever it is, what I would encourage someone to do is to try and figure out where it might be coming from. And as I've mentioned before, dysmenorrhea has to do with hormone imbalance. Now, there are more hormones than letters of the alphabet, and they are all connected too. It's a delightfully complicated situation or system. So I'm sorry, I'm being attacked by a cat right now. He wants attention. Interestingly, they have a lot of the same hormones, almost all the same hormones we do. Anyways, so without blood work, it would be pretty tricky to tell specifically what hormones are involved. I mean, you can guess and say like probably estrogen and progesterone, but who knows? So luckily, without going really deep, there are some low-hanging fruits which may be able to alleviate or address the issue to a certain extent, and probably help all around in how you feel. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of these. First, the framework which I like to use, borrowing from Chris Kresser, who I'll put a lot of resources for you guys in the description box below. I think his work is excellent, chriskresser.com. And he uses the framework of talking about 4 pillars of health. And those would be diet, movement, sleep, and stress management. And notice I said movement, not exercise there, and if you want to know more about why it's movement, not exercise, I would encourage you to check that material out. But the 2 fruits, low-hanging fruits I want to talk about, is first, are you getting the building blocks that you need to be able to make these particular hormones? Because hormones are basically they're chemicals that we make in our body, and we have to make them from very specific things. What we're making them from is cholesterol. We can either get cholesterol from our diet, which by the way only comes from animal sources. There is a plant analog, but it's not an analog, but it is basically the plant form, but it's not the same. So we can get it from our diet, or we can make it. And actually, we do both. And we make it from fats. So it's really, really important that you're getting the right healthy fats. And there's a big it's been going on for about 50 years, sort of a demonization of fats. And another excellent book to learn about that a little bit is Eat the Yolks. I'll also put the description below. I'll put it in the description below, a link to it. So that's a big one. Just make sure that you're getting the things that you need to be able to make the hormones. Because if you aren't getting the right building blocks, so every cell in our body uses cholesterol. So there's a lot of competition for it. So even though what you're making might not be going to your sex hormones, it might be going to your stress hormones instead if you're living a stressful lifestyle. The other really big one, and I think this probably is going to apply to pretty much everyone in our modern society. So whether it's painful menstrual cramps that you're dealing with, or fatigue, or cognitive abilities, anything like that, big, big, big one is sleep. And remember before I said I'm not a doctor, you got to talk to your doctor. I can pretty much guarantee that your doctor's not going to be upset with me for encouraging you to look at sleep and sleep hygiene and your sleep patterns. So sleep is super important. Most of us aren't getting enough of it. And there's multiple things which we need to keep in mind. Duration and the timing. So why, right? And you hear it all the time, oh, sleep is important, sleep is important. But the reason that it's important is, well, there's a lot of reasons, but we'll talk about two. Big one, there's certain activities that your immune system only does when you're asleep. So if you're not getting enough sleep, your immune system isn't getting to carry out its job and actually protect you, right? The adaptive immune system needs you to be asleep for it to do its job. The other one, which is what is more pertinent to this conversation, is that the sleep cycle. Sleep is part of our whole circadian rhythm, and that has to do with when we're producing hormones and how much of that hormone and those hormones are we creating, and how our body responds and acts with those. So there's different numbers out there, but you'll get a pretty good general consensus that people need to be sleeping at least 8 hours. I encourage a lot more than 8 hours. I'm going to put a link to an excellent book, and if you don't look at any resources that I've put down there except for this book, then, that's what actually I'd say look at all of them, but this would be the top one. It's a book called Lights Out. I don't remember who the author is offhand, and it's a little bit of an older book. I think it came out in the early 2000s. There's been a lot of information since then that has come out, but it's still really important, and it answers a ton of questions that you probably didn't even know that you had. So I know that this doesn't seem like they would be connected, but a lack of sleep may be strongly connected with why you may be having these cramps. Again, I can't diagnose that. That's just a guess, but sleep can make a huge difference in your hormone levels and really help you to balance that out. So this is something that in our household, both my partner and I used to suffer from really extreme insomnia, so we did a lot of research on it, and have to say that our lives have been changed just for delightful, wonderful, better. And there's a couple of tips. One, you can research sleep hygiene, and that will give you some ideas. But things that have really worked for us is using different colored light. So there's a hormone called melatonin, which you've probably heard of. It's something we can also take, artificial forms of melatonin, which are generally considered pretty safe. But melatonin, we have receptors in our eyes which tell our bodies whether to make or to suppress making melatonin. Those sensors are sensitive to blue light and the lights right on either side of blue. So during the day, we get a lot of blue light. So that's coming from the sun. Remember that we're getting the full spectrum from the sun. So it's including the blue light. Now, firelight, that doesn't have blue light, so that doesn't keep us up. But as long as we're receiving blue light, then the melatonin production is being suppressed. Melatonin is what helps us calm down. It's a precursor for other hormones, and it's what helps us to sleep. So unfortunately, in today's world, we've got screens like this, the one that whatever you're watching on right now. Most likely it's using blue light. So there are a couple of great apps out there for both. You can see the red light coming from my screen. I have an app called Twilight on here, and on our computers we use one called Flux. It's f.lux, which just tweaks the lighting, and it's on a timer, right? So when it's night, it switches over to a red light away from the blue, so that we aren't getting the blue light into our eyes, telling us to not get sleepy. The other thing that we've done is, you can probably see The light that I've got back here is actually an orange light. For the camera, I do have some of the full spectrum lights on so that it wouldn't be really weird for you guys to view me, but most of the time at night, we only have the red lights on, which really, really helps us to sleep. Some people like to use, I say red, ours are orange. You can use red or orange. The orange, I think, are make it a little bit easier to see. They're a little bit brighter. We bought some LEDs for $5 off of Amazon that are supposedly supposed to last years and years, and it's made a huge difference. So there's links to that in the box below. And then there's other ones that, ideas like taking a hot bath or a hot shower before getting ready for bed, because once you get out, you get that drop in body temperature, which actually signals our body to sleep. Sleeping in a cooler room, using, personally I like chamomile. There's some herbs that people use to calm down. But whatever you can do to get a regular sleep cycle with at least 8 hours. And if you're anything like me, I don't go to sleep as soon as I hit the pillow, right? And sleep so I'll give myself a little bit more time than however much. I actually sleep at least 9.5 hours. If I sleep less than that, I don't feel good. I feel good at 9.5. So I'll actually give myself 9 hours and 45 minutes or 10 hours that I'm laying in bed to compensate for that time that I don't fall asleep or I get up in the middle of the night to pee or that sort of thing. So I know this is a little bit of a different video, but I think it really is important to step back for a minute and take a look at what may be the cause of whatever's going on and approach it from trying to address the cause in order to not to ignore addressing the symptoms, right? Because it sucks to be in pain. And things like spell work and meditation and things like that can really, really help us to address that, and is an excellent tool. But also looking at the root of it and addressing it at the root of the problem. Again, spell work might help to address that problem, but it may not be as simple, or it might be simple, right? It might be something like getting more healthy fats in your diet or something like that. But we have a whole set of tools to use, and so I really encourage you guys to check out some of the links that I've provided below, and I hope that this was helpful in some way. And yeah, so I think we've got another topic next week, and then we will be, so we've got another topic, and then it will be subs and the holiday break. So let us know in the comments below what you think. If you guys have any tricks for the sleeping or hormonal balance or anything like that, and take care.